I do believe we have both of our presenters out here. Yes, we do. We do. We have both of our presenters out here in the wings. All right. And so we have Dr. Azalea Boyd and Dr. Raye Taylor. And presenting today, Dr. Boyd is the Chief Veterinary Medical Officer of Urban CAC, and Dr. Taylor is Senior Veterinary Medical Officer for the Rural CAC. And they're going to be speaking about Vet Ready, Curiosity Saves the Cats. About Dr. Boyd. Dr. Boyd is a double graduate of the historically Black college and university, Tuskegee University. There, she received a doctorate in veterinary medicine and a Bachelor of Science in Animal and Poultry Science. After earning her degrees, Dr. Boyd completed an emergency surgery and internal medicine internship, strengthening her medical skills. Once getting out into the work field, she has served as a valued associate at multiple clinics and hospitals within Metro Atlanta, held leadership positions as medical director and mentor, and continues to provide high-quality veterinary care day to day. Dr. Taylor is a Red Lake Nation descendant and is the first in her family to go to college. She's worked with many animals from insects to birds and fish. However, she spent most of her career working with dogs, cats, and horses. For education, Dr. Taylor has degrees from Iowa State University in animal ecology, zoology, and microbiology, and then left her PhD track to attend veterinary school at St. George's University. She has certificates from the University of Minnesota, veterinary medicine, and Cornell University in leadership, and carries certifications in the human-animal bond and hospice and palliative care. With years in general practice, regulation, and teaching, she's always maintained a relationship with community work. This has extended from mentorship and leadership at the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary and leadership at the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary Medicine in veterinary clinics, on mobile services, and at the races. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Taylor, I believe.
Good morning,
I
Stacey.
am going to jump in. Thank you so much, Stacey, for the lovely introduction. And good morning, everyone. Excuse me. I am so honored to be here with you guys today. My name is Dr. Azalea Boyd, and as Stacey said, I am a veterinarian based in the vibrant city of Atlanta, Georgia. So today, I'm thrilled to introduce our presentation, Curiosity Saves the Cats, where we'll get into some of the critical issues surrounding the barriers to access to veterinary care and how curiosity can be powerful in making a positive change. And as you can see on the screen, joining me this morning is my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Raye Taylor. She'll jump on and just give you an introduction and jump into the presentation. But just so that you guys all know, this will be an interactive presentation. So please, even though it's virtual, get ready to get involved and stay with us today. We do have some giveaways and some fun games so that no one falls asleep this morning. So hopefully that's exciting. But as Stacey said, I graduated from Tuskegee University School of Veterinary Medicine in 2008. And I am a proud alumni of the historically Black college and university that houses a veterinary school, Tuskegee University. Throughout my career, I've worn various hats from roles in leadership to serving as an associate and in general practice and emergency. And today I am the Chief Veterinary Medical Officer for our division Community Animal Care for CARE, which stands for Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity. In this role, I really get to dive into my passion in veterinary medicine, which has always been centered around not only healing the pets, but also understanding the impact the healing the pet has on the family. So Curiosity Saves the Cats today. Remember, it's more than just a presentation. It's going to be lots of fun. It's going to be very insightful, but it's also going to be a call to action because we believe that curiosity, which is that desire to learn more, is the key to breaking down barriers and creating a beautiful, better future for all, especially our kitties. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Raye.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to do a quick warm up here. So I can't even add anything to Stacey's introduction. She did an amazing job. So thank you so much for welcoming us here. We're very excited to join you. If everyone can kind of start with getting out a device. So if you have a cell phone, a tablet, and you can even do it on another window on the computer, if that's what you're using to view the presentation today. So we're going to either go to this website called menti.com, enter the code, or you can scan this QR code and it'll bring you to the same site. This is the platform that we're going to be using for our interaction today. So I hope you enjoy it and have a lot of fun. If you lose track of it throughout the presentation, the code and Menti, just as you can see at the very top of the screen, stays there. So if you lose it, you can always come back in and join us. So hopefully everyone's got a little bit of time here. I see some people have figured out that you can be interactive. And so if you have the screen open, there's not a question available, but you can see that you can send us a cat, which is really awesome, or a thumbs up. And so those are going to be available through the presentation as well. So I see we've got some people on board. Let's go to a practice question and see how this goes for everyone. So first of all, before we get started, what do you know about CARE? So these are some things I wanted to check and see. And if you don't know anything or not much about us, that's okay too. We just kind of want to see where we're at with this audience. These are some things that we're going to, of course, talk about today, and just wanting to know what kind of message is out there. We're a relatively young nonprofit organization, just a toddler, 3 years old, but we want to make sure that we're out here working with the communities that are already doing amazing work, especially in the cat population, because as you all know, this is definitely an underrepresented, undercared for, underseen part of our animal population. So a part of this interaction tool is that they will kind of stay open, or sometimes it'll let you make multiple responses. That's intentional, so feel free to make answers multiple times if you need to. If it's not allowed, it won't let you. So there's nothing that you have to worry about doing wrong or right. The program will walk you through that. These results are live most of the time, unless there's something that we don't want to show quite yet. Yeah, as you can see, this one auto-populates, so you can do that. We're going to do one more practice round here. We're going to go to a different kind of activity, but the same platform. So in single words, it just works better if it's in single words. But the best part about cats is what? And so for those of you on the platform, you've seen that it's advanced you to this slide to be able to do that. If not, it'll say, move to the next slide, yes or no. So the way that this one works is that because you're using one word at a time, every time someone says the same word, that word's going to get bigger and bigger on the screen. That just gives us a little bit of a fun time to see what is everyone saying. What I love most about this right now is that everything is the biggest word. We definitely know we're in good company, because I think most of us agree that there's so much to love about cats. They're such unique personalities, even if that means full of sassiness. So there's some fun things on here. Purrs, they've got whiskers, beans. I love that. Everyone loves the toe beans. Who doesn't, right? They're so fun. You guys are doing great. So we don't have, this isn't the entire presentation. We're going to get into some content, but we do want to engage you. It's the morning, it's Saturday. I think most of the country is a little gloomy, but that's pretty on par for January. So doing great, you guys. We're going to go into our first content question of the day. So put your thinking caps on. And I think this will continue to update for a little bit. I love that everything in PERS is the biggest. All right. So about how many million households have cats in the USA? So this is an estimator bar, so it'll let you slide back and forth. What do you think? How many million households have cats in the USA? And this data is an estimate from 22 to 24. So it's an estimate. We don't have exact numbers. The trick about this question for this audience is that this is in households. So this does not account for our cats that are in colonies that are not associated with a human that cares for them. So very interesting to see what that number is. Give you guys another about 10 seconds here. All right, let's see where we're at. About 60 million. Actually, the number is 62 million. That's pretty impressive. And I know all of you know that's not always the most representative number. However, when we're looking at households, these 62 million households that have cats, how many of them do you think have more than one cat? Of the 62, how many have 2 or more cats? I see we're seeing a lot of love here. Okay, all right, give you a few more seconds to put your guesses in. So of those 62 million, about half have 2 or more cats. So that's something that lets us know that multiple cat households is about 50% of those with households, or those within households. What I love about that statistic is that means the people who are having cats in their households realize the benefits of having more than one, not only for themselves, but hopefully for their actual cat's interactions and social needs of a cat. So we're going to dive into looking at that number. What's most unique is that of those cats in households, 1 in 5 do not get veterinary care. That is over 12 million cats that are in homes with humans that are not getting veterinary care. That is something that is incredibly concerning, that statistic alone, not to mention our colony population within the countries, that they're not getting care. I know we have some people attending from out of the US, so this is our US numbers, but I venture to guess that these are quite similar wherever you're at in the world, some a little higher, some a little lower, but that the goal is to understand that cats themselves are most definitely being underserved. So when I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think the barriers to care are? What have you faced? What have you seen? What have you heard? Barriers to care is the first place that we want to start at when we see that over 12 million cats are not getting care. We care about veterinary care not because Dr. Boyd and I are veterinarians, but because we want animal health to be a priority, because we want that animal to stay with that human as long as possible and to live a quality, healthy life. We know that connection is critical, and that pain that someone sees if their animal is not healthy, the way that cat's behavior changes in your home if they're not healthy, and what that would mean as a family member to not be able to provide care. We want to know what those barriers are. So what you're telling me in this presentation today is I'm hearing that transportation is a barrier. I'm seeing the cost really central to that, and access. It's almost like you guys have seen my presentation, right? Because those are exactly the things that we're aware of. And we want to start making creative solutions. One of the problems that we have is, how do we do that? Where do we go? And how do we get our veterinarians and our veterinary technicians and assistants and managers and receptionists and caretakers the tools that they need to increase this access, to monitor alternatives for transportation, to work on creative solutions for money and cost. All right, we're going to close this poll. You guys have done an amazing job. I really appreciated your responses here. I think you're right on. You guys really are in touch with what those barriers are. So this is the voice of the people, I like to say on this slide. We're hearing what you personally are feeling. So when we ask the community of veterinarians, what is the biggest barrier to care? The data that they report is this kind of big chunk statistic of reasons for not seeing the veterinarian. So things in that top box, they seem to highlight that 87% that persons with cats said, oh, they're not sick, they're not injured, they don't need to go, or they don't need vaccines, or that the family gave vaccines and care themselves and didn't need a professional. So you see this did not have money, 9%. Our veterinary care costs more than it's worth, 6%. So that money piece is about 15% of this particular study. But then we go down here to the bottom, those in orange, they're not highlighted in blue. There's options are inconvenient. You guys said that in your poll. No veterinarians in your area. You guys said that. A negative experience with a prior vet. Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's 3% of families that didn't have a medical reason, but they had a trust reason. And you guys called it out too, transport. Those are real barriers. Not only are you seeing it every day and you know it, but here's some data to back that up. But having data gives us a little more power to be able to push through and ask for things like support and to be able to drive interest in creating those solutions. So for care, we know that the bottom part of this chart, right, these orange numbers, these tend to be forgotten. They're seen as marginalized. And what's worse is that those communities at the bottom are often associated with people who are already marginalized for other things, whether that's socioeconomic, geographic, racial, gender. We're seeing that now these compounding reasons are really a dangerous place, especially when we consider that we can make a significant impact by addressing these problems. So to say on the bottom, we can make a significant impact in the overall health of cats.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you, audience. That was great participation. And you guys are right in line. Like she said, like you guys might have seen our presentation before, but you guys are in touch. And so here it is. We have this photo, and it's a photo that I absolutely love because I'm looking at it and it's the beginning, right? It's that first moment. And we see this family. We can see the woman's face beaming with joy. They're super excited about their new baby, and they're committed to providing the best possible care that they can. But for us, it's very important to know that those hurdles are there, and many families face hurdles when being able to provide care. So on the previous graph, we looked at the factors from studies like the absence of veterinarians, negative experiences, financial constraints. Those challenges are all real, and they do affect the ability of families, particularly those from marginalized communities, to provide the optimal health for their pets. Slide. So what is access to care, right? We have this working definition, but really to keep it simple, it's the ability of pet families to obtain timely and affordable veterinary services. Slide, please. And so in that one graph that we looked at, that was from the AVMA, but then we have another source. We have the Access to Veterinary Care Coalition, and they also listed barriers to access to veterinary care for communities. The biggest barrier, which is I think one of the biggest words we saw in the middle of that word bubble, was financial, was cost, right? And that's followed by transportation, lack of transportation, the fear of judgment, unable to find a clinic with the same language, right? Some people don't know where to go. I saw it in the word bubble, especially with rural communities. I didn't see this, but something as simple as the lack of a leash or a carrier, right? So when we look at those barriers, some may say, well, why, right? What is this fear of judgment? Or why don't you have any money? And I love those questions really, because that means you're being what? You're being curious, you're asking, right? Or why don't you have a car? And in our profession, unfortunately, when it comes to finances, we hear this a lot. Well, if you don't have any money, you shouldn't have a pet, right? And that's heartbreaking. When we hear that statement, it is an end. There is no question that follows that incites that curious mind to help us solve problems. But when you're truly asking those questions and are truly curious about the how and the why, then that's when you open the opportunity for learning. Slide, please. And so when we talk about barriers to care, and in answering some of those questions, we cannot overlook the broader social inequities that shape these challenges, right? So we have things like racism and color blindness. These result in an unequal distribution of resources and opportunities that influence access to care for different racial and ethnic groups. We have classism, we talk about that, and the myth of being a classless society, right? Economic disparities contribute to the varying levels of financial resources, and that affects individuals from different socioeconomic backgrounds to access care, right? Then we have prioritization of money and wealth, where financial status is what often determines what you're able to access, and that creates the barrier for many seeking care. So these inequities are deeply rooted, and it's really important to recognize that these issues are socio-historical, which means that they're constructed over time and shaped by history and cultural content. Slide, please. So we have those social inequities, right? But then we also have social determinants of health. Some of you guys may be familiar with this term, but it is what are the social factors that are determining your health as a person, right? And these are very simple. These determinants can be conditions where you're born, or where you grow, or where you live, or where you work, or your age even. And they significantly influence individuals' health outcomes. So there's a research that links poor social determinants of health to ailments like diabetes and heart disease. Okay. And so how does it tie into veterinary medicine and our pet population? We can stay on that last slide, but how does it tie in? These social determinants, usually when they affect people, they're also going to pour into the health of their pets and the veterinary side. So if you are likely to have poor health based on your social factors, that means that your pet will likely have poor health based on your social factors. And there's a lot more research being done about social determinants of health for veterinary care. Slide, please. And so when you think about the structural inequities and then you add the social determinants of health, you can find a pet owner who comes from a marginalized community, has a poor social determinant of health, right? And then we find that they're more likely to have fear of medical facilities. They don't know how much the bill is going to be, and they're worried about that. That's fearful. They don't know what the diagnosis is going to be and whether they're going to be able to afford it, and they're afraid about that. So those are things that they're worried about. And then we're adding the historic fear in some cultures of medical facilities in general. We said this word earlier, just not being trusted. And when people are afraid of going to the medical doctors for themselves, sometimes they also hesitate to seek medical care for their pets. So we're seeing these problems and we're understanding that they exist. And then there's another layer that we're adding on, right? When these individuals go and seek veterinary care for their families, what happens? They don't see people in the industry that look like them, which can create another barrier because it can feel like they can't relate, right? And what barrier that brings up is that additional layer of that lack of trust. So really quickly, in veterinary medicine, 2% of veterinarians are Black. Less than 2% are Indigenous, right? And in the animal welfare world, 84% of animal welfare is white and female, right? So those numbers are huge, and we see that there's a lack of representation that exists in the field. Why does it matter? We'll advance to the next slide. Because we hear what our clients are saying. And I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but we do hear that our clients have concerns. I have to translate for my parents, right? The first comment at the vet, I remember the vet looking at us as if something was wrong for us not getting our pet vaccinated. We had limited funds, but no one asked why, right? So really, representation is going to be super important and part of the solutions. Next slide, please. And so how do we improve access to care? We could advance to the next slide, because there are some things that we already know that we need, right? And some of these are actually happening already. We need low cost and accessible resources for people and their pets, right? And that means a lot more initiatives to improve access to veterinary care. Our industry as a whole, the animal health equity industry, we need to incorporate animal health equity into our industry. So that means social workers, animal welfare organizations, veterinarians, insurance companies. We really, truly all have to work together. And then we need to build those trusted facilities that are welcoming, that have inclusive environments, that their staff are diverse as much as we can get them. And if not, being culturally competent, right? Having an understanding of different cultures for that wide range of pet owners that you're going to see, right? So those are solutions that we know. As we move forward, we can look at some of the solutions. I saw that many of you guys don't know who we are and what we do at CARE, but we are trying to solve some of these. We can advance the slide. And as an organization, how do we improve access to care? So what we've elected to do is we've elected to address personal and organizational biases within animal welfare and veterinary medicine, right? We want to break some of those biases that people have about people in marginalized communities or people of different cultures, right? We want to bring diverse voices to animal well-being. We want to use evidence-based tools and narratives and insights to inspire other organizations to be more inclusive. And we also want to identify sustainable solutions within communities to create transformative change. So this is very much a core of how CARE as an organization is aiming to solve some of these problems. And so in doing that, we want to teach, right? A lot of us just don't know. It's not that we're bad people. We just need to know how to do that. How do we go about, trying to chip away at this big mountain, right, that we can't seem to cross over? But one of the things that we've done is we created a course called READY, and it stands for Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And since 2020, CARE has been offering the READY course, where participants get to understand the entire ecosystem of life-saving animal well-being and knowledge of social inequities and structural inequities and knowledge of classism and racism. And when you get knowledge on that, then the participants are better prepared to counteract those inequities and identify what's missing in their organization or within themselves or their practices, right? And because it's so powerful, and we've seen it so powerful on the animal welfare side, we decided that there would be a lot of power in a similar course for those on the veterinary health side. So in the veterinary industry, our READY course is now Vet Ready.
So these are when we get to have some curious cats on board. The Vet Ready training is targeted not just around animal welfare, but really about the veterinary profession, because that's a subset of animal welfare that kind of keeps isolated. It's siloed and works, with the actual animal and the clients on a day-to-day basis. So it has the biggest opportunity to work on that human interaction side, where sometimes in our shelters and our community work, the ratio of animals to humans is lower. The work is just as important. But this community within the animal welfare, the veterinary community, they're missing this opportunity to be curious. So here it is. We're creating this environment for them to be able to be curious, to learn about those things, because like Dr. Boyd said, these are amazing people. These are amazing, wonderful, well-intentioned people doing the good work, but there's gaps. And certainly that's not something that any of them get in a professional training scenario. So this is going to really focus on those opportunities. Like we mentioned in the statistics, that these access to care barriers are often associated with other barriers, and racial disparities is a key player. If we start to work on this one piece, because again, so many things to work on, this has a cascade effect, because it is one of those margins that we know we have a lot of data on and we have the ability to correct. We're going to work on those who aren't of various racial ethnicities to be able to combat bias and discrimination that they may not even be aware of. So creating a database of tools, of awareness, opening dialogue, that's part of what they're going to get in the Vet Ready training. We're going to work on those communication skills. Like that comment from one of the clients, they didn't ask why. Such a simple ability to ask an open-ended question can engage a family and create a collaborative relationship to solve those health concerns within that open communication. We want to help empower some of our teams to be able to be inclusive. Most people don't even know where to start, and we respect that. That's part of being human and in our society. So we want to create some tools for them, and that's going to be in our Vet Ready course. That cultural piece, it's easy to identify cultures that may be parts of the world, but we realize that culture is so much more than that. Culture could be religion, it could be geographic area, it could be nationality, it could be whether or not you have an ability or a disability, it could be your family's traumatic culture. All of these cultures play into how you're interpreting medical care, how you're experiencing that. So by creating a team, a veterinary team that can actually embrace or understand or appreciate those various differences will help give them an opportunity to connect with an open mind to these persons who are caring for the animals. Everyone on all sides of the table want the success, the health of the animal to be elevated. So creating this awareness and ability is something that we can do to actually make a measurable impact on those barriers. The culture of the workplace is another culture. If we can't change the way the entire team sees a certain population that they're working with, then we can't move forward. It takes those champions, those disruptors to start that change, start that conversation in whomever they're working with within the veterinary space. With all of these things, our goal is to really be advocates, to create advocates, and to improve the overall knowledge beyond those technical skills that we know are key to them doing their job. And that is not something that stops at the end of a course. This is a lifelong journey. We cannot create a program where we educate and then expect to be done. That's not supportive of how we want people to interact on veterinary teams, and that's not going to be the way that we do things. We have plans in place to continue that dialogue, to continue that learning over time, and to create an open space to communicate with the challenges so that our silo of veterinary medicine and those silos get even smaller if you're looking at individual hospitals or shelters or school systems, that by creating those environments where you get to interact with other persons experiencing those same challenges helps create that sense of belonging and gives them support so that they continue to be those champions, to be those disruptors, and to give them some type of support to continue in that advocacy work.
So it is a lot. There's a lot of work to do here, right? You guys are probably feeling a little overwhelmed, and that's okay because that emotion is normal. But it's also very important to know that even though we're doing our small part, you guys are in this too, because essentially, as corny as this may sound, we are all doing this together, right? And so we need to lean on community leaders, right? We need to build that trust, that open dialogue with community leaders, because a lot of times people within the community are going to people that they trust, and those are leaders in their own community. We can't be from the outside dictating on what's going on or what should we do for this community. We have to get community leaders involved. We have to use their wisdom and their trust, because we believe no matter the culture, no matter the marginalized community, there is genius and wisdom within those communities. We have to do this with shelters and rescue organizations, with partners. We need allies, we need sponsors, we need professors, and so on. We are all doing this work together. So really excited about Vet Ready. I hope you guys are maybe almost excited as we are, but it is a commitment. It is that commitment to the well-being of our pets, and not just the pets, but the people who care for them. Every pet's health is ready. The vets are ready. I hope you guys are catching the play on words by now. And the pet owners have a peace of mind and are ready and are at ease. And ultimately, the world then will be ready. So thank you so very much for hanging in there with us at the start of the morning. We hope that we've inspired you guys to stay curious, to ask questions, to learn more, right? To check your biases as well. We all have them, right? But we just need to stay curious so that as an industry, as a whole, as a world, we can just be better. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Raye for the QR code.
Thanks. So this QR code, feel free to not do it quite yet. This is one that if you want information on Vet Ready certification, that you can go and sign up for a newsletter, but we're going to make it even easier for you right now. In the platform that you're using, if you share your email, it will get sent to you. That one is not going to show up on the screen like the other ones. We'll keep that on our side. But what we're going to do with those emails, first, by sharing, you are going to give us the ability to contact you. We're going to let you know updates on Vet Ready and Ready training, so that if you want to know this resource, know more about it, we're going to follow up with you with that email. As an added bonus, those of you that share your email during the chat today, Sorry for those that are reaching out later, but that's what the QR code is for you. For those on the call today, by sharing your email, we're going to select, I think, 1 or 2 of you to receive a care swag bag. So we're going to get you some goodies, whether that's clothing, stickers, all kinds of fun stuff that we'll go ahead and mail to you. So we'll communicate with you via email for winners of that. We'll be able to know that not too long after the presentation, so we'll probably be able to give that information to Stacy to announce as well. But very excited for you to feel free to send your email along and get those updates. That is the only thing you're committing to, but feel free while you're there to check out the CARE website. There's a lot of things that if you're curious about our group, there's so much rich information available on the website outside of this particular training. So feel free to pop into that. Look through our stories. We have amazing stories from amazing pet owners. Look through our collaborators. We work with some really talented individuals who work specifically with cats, work in TNR programs, work in communities that, again, don't have that access, but they're the portal. They're the ones that are actually connecting their community animals with the resources and needs that might not be there. So feel free to share your email. We'll have this one up again later, but definitely have that opportunity to enter that. At this point in time, we want to make sure we give you guys an opportunity to ask us questions. So I'm going to put a poll up here that you can look at for fun. But in the meantime, feel free to send questions in the chat. Stacy and their team will send that over to us. But this is just a fun, curious question for us to do in the meantime. So I put a cheater question on there for terms that are used for a group of cats. Colony is probably something pretty common. So just looking to see if you guys think any of these other terms are terms that you would use to refer to a group of cats. So no Googling, just give us a guess. I think I have it set up that you can choose more than one. So let us know what words you think you would use to refer to a group of cats. Stacy and team, do we have any questions?
Yes, this is fantastic. I think we're all just a little mesmerized by the tech going on here. So this is wonderful. I'm going to turn on my camera. Feel free to turn on your cameras, Dr. Taylor and Boyd. And I am checking on the questions for sure. And as I said earlier, as you both came on board, I'm queen of the questions, as folks know out there. First question that came out in the question box is, if there are folks, everybody was, I think, awesome presentation, really great. Money, of course, money was floating around there in the very beginning. So, if there's an organization that's interested in trying to embark on an initiative, is there funding out there for something like that?
There absolutely is. And I think that's part of the challenge when you have a group. I know we're talking to the talented people who are doing that work every day, that they're working in their community, and this is not their primary job most of the time, right? They're doing other things. They have families to care for. They have other jobs to be able to secure. So that skill set of even finding that money can be very difficult to navigate. And that's part of what CARE will do as well. So we have people on the ground in the community doing the work that need that assistance. And it may not be direct financial assistance, but it may be training, like how do I work through grants? How do I connect? How do I get to communities? And Maddie's is an amazing resource for everyone in this community to be able to do that. But there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations that are willing to help. They just need that connection. So that's part of what we do at CARE, is really connect and educate. Someone may want to make a 501(c), but they don't have the skill set. And for a community member, again, focusing on many things, that's difficult to get into. We also want to be able to ask our community for support in the way that they are able to support. So sometimes those financial needs can actually drop if we're utilizing our community in a better way that actually decreases the financial need. So lots of opportunities there for that. And again, with our education, this is a structured course that we have. Ready is a structured course, but our Circle of Learning and Leadership is creating modules constantly to be able to address these questions, give people tools where to start so that they can actually have an impact on their community and spend their time doing the good work rather than the background work. Dr. Boyd, do you have anything to add? Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, she's muted. Yeah, you're muted, Dr. Boyd.
I managed to have
Oh.
that mute perfectly the whole time until now. I better, Dr. Taylor, perfect. I don't know if there was questions in relation to where people could give. And if that is something that is of interest to folks, that information can be found on our website. We do, as CARE, also have a fund that we utilize. We call it our Direct Care Fund. And so we do a lot of fundraising and promoting and talking specifically to help the marginalized communities in need.
I have a question. You're talking about the fact that there are, so few, there's such a lack of diversity amongst the veterinary practice community. And so a majority of our veterinarians now are female and white. Now, if I'm going back in my history of time, I think in the 70s, was it like the 70s and the 80s, it used to be white male was the dominance. And then there was a transitionary period into making this a female dominated sort of industry, what, in the early 80s maybe? Do you foresee a similar type of transition? Are we looking at a 20 to 30 year transition going on here?
That is a wonderful question. So I have some wonderful numbers for you. Before I answer that, I'm going to tell you that for those of you curious about the quiz on the screen, all of these, it's a trick question, all of these are actually terms to refer to a group of cats. I've never heard of a pounce, but that seems like the most practical use of the word pounce. So I found that very intriguing. I'm just going to move that backup screen while we continue talking for another fun quiz. If we look at the veterinary profession, it has historically been fighting against diversity, any kind of diversity. The white male profession was simply the norm. And now when we had women wanting to engage, the first woman that got into veterinary school and became a veterinarian was in 1903. By 1947, so 45 years later, there was still not 100 women veterinarians. That's a huge time point. Then another 40 so years later into the 90s, we finally got to the point where in veterinary school, the number of women students outnumbered the number of male students. But in the general profession, that was still predominantly male. Then it took another, I think it was 2007. So from say 90s to 2007. So now 17 years, we've shaved that down by half. Now women outnumber men in the profession. So now we have a different kind of gender disparity that we have to conscientiously look at if we don't want a gender disparity. So now if we look at race as another well-established disparity, and now we're getting to the point where 4% of the profession, up all the way up to if we have all of our races kind of combined in that, we still have under 10% of the profession represented in racial disparity. So I deeply hope that we're not looking at 100 years before we get to a point of racial equity. But the truth is, we know that it's going to take a lot of time because we are challenged by not only the sheer numbers of veterinarians that are currently practicing that you have to flip that table for. We're at a point where we're accepting under 25% of the veterinary student population is diverse. So we know we're definitely not even at that halfway point. And our goal is to reach around that halfway point because that mimics the population diversity that we have. So we're not looking to flip the table upside down. We're looking to kind of equilibrate with the races and the diversity of races that we currently have in the population. That gives us a good landing mark, like where are we headed? So with that, we hope that there's some significant changes over the next 20 to 40 years, but realizing that we are fighting a lot of battles. So having a realistic goal is important. The other challenge that we face as far as diversity goes is reaching the cultural divide. Dr. Boyd, do you want to talk about that, about reaching our youth?
Yeah, no problem. So I fall into the question of the lack of diversity, right? And because people want to know that too, what contributes to this lack of diversity? And one of the biggest things that I think that we have decided upon, and as more studies are being done, is that the youth veterinarians who reflect who they are, right? And so, if you don't have a profession that looks like you, sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's attainable, right? And so part of this is making sure that we talk to the academic deans, committees of these veterinary schools and say, what's in your application, right? And why is it that out of 100 students, you couldn't find one Black student or one Indigenous student? But then you look at where I graduated from, Tuskegee University, and my class was smaller. It's a private school, so it's 50. But out of 50, there was 25 Black students, right? That make amazing or wonderful veterinarians. At least I'd like to think of myself as a wonderful veterinarian, right? But where are we not finding those gaps? And in order to do that, again, it takes more than one angle. We have to show our youth, because sometimes it's a cultural thing where, certain cultures, specifically mine of Caribbean background, I'm allowed to have a dog. And then when we finally got one, I wasn't allowed to have one in the house. So it comes with, understanding culture and making the academics, deans, and the admissions committee, and that some of the things on the application are really limiting just because of someone's culture, not because they can't be a great doctor or be a great person in the field. And then when we get those people in the field, pets do start coming into, families do start coming in, they can see individuals that look like them, maybe have their same hair, their same tone, their clothes, their accent, whatever that may be. It definitely opens it up.
We have a question here from one of our attendees. They say, we serve one of the most segregated and financially disparate cities in the US. How does a majority white rescue organization connect with new communities that need support? I will defer to Dr. Boyd first, and you can deflect over to Dr. Taylor if that works better.
Works fine. So I think that is a beautiful curiosity question, honestly. And thank you for asking that question. How can you is by, we had a slide on there that says go to your community leaders, right? Ask those that are involved. So if you are a predominantly white organization, what do the people at the top of your organization look like? What do your directors look like, right? And then take it on down. What does your staff look like, right? And as you start to look at, wait a minute, we are, there's 10 people on this executive board and there's no racial diversity in this board. Maybe we need to start with reframing who is within our organization, right? Because then once you get that diversity within the organization, those are going to be the voices that are going to help you find the voices that you're looking for, right, within the community. Because again, it goes to that trust factor, right? It goes to that relatability factor. And sometimes those are the barriers that we have to break. So I would first say, look within your organization, then look within the community. And then what's very unique about CARE is that, and I'm just going to toot our own horn for a second, we are the only BIPOC-led, which is Black and Indigenous people of color, BIPOC-led organization. So I am not, as a Black woman, in a large organization that has a title that says DEI anything, right? I am a part of the very top of what we do in our organization. And I think that's crucial. And I don't know if Dr. Taylor wants to add.
That is exactly it. You have to just own it. Like, even though we know that these are predominantly white women led, there's nothing wrong with those women, those white women being leaders. Like, they want to help. They're well-intentioned. They are good, honest people. But there is a disconnect. Like, you just might not know all the details. And so you can own that and ask for help. Literally, hey, this is a community I work with. I'm bringing my perspective, which might be white, female, this, historical experience to the table. I want more voices because I don't want to miss something. I want to fill in the gaps. And that can be literally someone's house that you're at, you're getting a rescue, or whether it's someone's surrendering an animal or someone's adopting an animal. Start them. Be like, hey, I see you're really happy about this connection with your animal. Are you or anyone else that you know passionate and would be interested in working with us? Start the conversation there, because you're not going to be able to know exactly who you're seeking. So ask the community members.
Yeah.
And for this quiz that's up, FYI, Tom, Tigger, and Bella are the most common cat names.
Interesting. I like the one cat, right?
Cats. Yeah.
Someone named their cat Bird.
I've had a client cat named Dog.
Yeah. I mean, I have a super loaded question. Our attendees, they know I love asking really hard questions. So this is it's a multifactorial question. Understanding the world that we live in today, where we have lack of human diversity, lack of economic diversity, and then also in the veterinary practice, I'm going to go on my soapbox and say, really a lack of species diversity. I feel traditional veterinary practice is very dog focused, honestly. And I feel that the services that our cats in our communities need are not provided in structure and an environment that really serves all of the diversity that we have, the needs of the cats in the community, from TNR all the way through thyroid, radio cat treatment in an affordable, accessible manner for the folks that own those cats. So I look at things sort of almost in 3 layers, and then there's like locational. Well, locational sort of falls in the economic realm. I had a heated conversation with actually my brother, who's an economist, and we were talking about cats and everything, and he goes, well, it's a luxury good. And I was like, who thinks of cats like a luxury good, right, out there? But that's what some people, I mean, legally, a cat's valued at $35 in Massachusetts. It doesn't, but we've created this human family bond. Cats are part of our families. We have an incredible range of views around animals in society. So I'm asking you this question because is there a first layer, or do we try and take a little bite over here, a little bite over here? Is it is it getting spay neuter for $25 into like what I call the Magnificent Seven? Folks will hear about this later when I'm presenting, which is taking, the 7 lowest income zip codes in a community and just offer, free spay neuter into those communities. Is that the first start, or is it something more holistic? I want to get things done like tomorrow. So maybe Dr. Boyd and Dr. Taylor, you can pull me back and say, you know what, we can't be all things to all people, but what would you do in this situation? I just feel like there's so many cats that need our help.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stacey, and I think it is a loaded question, and it's a multifactorial question. So the answer is not going to be all here today, right? And I think, I honestly would say, I know where I would want to say that we start, but I'll go. But I honestly would say start where you feel comfortable, right? Wherever you feel you're comfortable, whether that is your focus is spay and neuter, whether your focus is in education, whether your focus is going into the schools and talking to the youth, start where you're comfortable. It's going to make an impact. And so I had to take a step back myself, Stacey, because I want to get it all done now. I want to help the whole world immediately. I want to help these cats and these dogs. But we can't look at it that way, right? So slow progress will lead to those changes. And then if we're going together, we're going to get there faster, right? So find organizations that align with your values and where you believe are your strengths. Link with those organizations and see what you can do. I think for us, and for me, specifically for CARE and for Vet Ready, our first start is education. And that's education on both sides. That's educating the community, because sometimes, again, people just know. Some people don't know what a spay is, right? And so you have folks saying, do you want to spay and neuter? And they're like, yeah, but they just say it, but they don't know, right? So really understanding that there is an education gap, and sometimes people just have to know. Communities need to have knowledge on best practices and how to really care for their pets. And then that, hopefully, as we get education on spay and neuter and prevention, diseases on fleas and ticks and all the things, that hopefully will prevent them from being in the emergency clinic with me on a Saturday night morning at 2 a.m., right? Giving them a bill that's $2,000 or $5,000, which then that becomes way unattainable for most people. So it really starts with, for me, education within the community, and then on the flip, education within the culture of whatever organizations you're in, right? Educating people on that aspect. And I'll turn it to Dr. Raye to see if she has some additional insights.
Oh, that is such a wonderful question. Stacey, I think completely with you. That frustration of, where do you go? I want it tomorrow. I want it, now. And there's so many pieces to that puzzle. So those are times where we're encouraging all of us to step back. So education, like Dr. Boyd said, like this is the poll question. I mean, we didn't even plan this, Stacy, but like, what do we even learn as veterinarians? And so these are the guesses of, do we learn about these things? And the point is no, right? We don't learn about feline colony behavior. We don't learn about TNR or sheltering in school. We learn about those technical things. So that education piece, that's huge. It's missing. And so those are something we're going to chip away at. We want to remember that, like CARE's mission, we want to do all the things. So they're picking something, one thing, and they're going to champion that one thing and be good at that. And that's racial equity. And how we're doing that is all of these million pieces, but the goal is one thing, because we can't do everything at once. So what we need to do in this field is embrace that we have to diversify the strengths and amplify the strengths, because each person, each group is going to have that piece of the pie. And if they're taking their piece and they're splitting it into a million things, they're not going to be as impactful as if they're allowed to focus. So respecting that this community, this cat community, has to each contribute their piece, and that's valuable, and give ourselves some grace that you can't do all the pieces, right? We're only one human. It doesn't mean you don't want to. So you can, if you can't do this piece, but you can say, hey, I know who does that piece and they do it great. Let's amplify that person. And this is my strength and this is my piece. You know, we have to remember that this changes. Even the last century, we didn't respect that humans were all humans, right? If we still in our society don't respect that humans of any race, culture, ethnicity are equal humans, then how can we expect our society to place value on animals? And that's a loaded question. That is one of the key pieces that is a barrier to this moving forward. The value of animals cannot be seen by a society who doesn't value humans. So those are the pieces we're working on. That's why CARE is focusing on racial equity, because we want to elevate the human relationship with humans and bring the animals with.
Well said. I want to thank you both, Dr. Boyd, Dr. Taylor. Thank you very much. This was a great presentation, great conversation.